Alright everyone, you probably saw that James Damore, or Damore, I'm not sure which way it's pronounced, has been fired from Google. He's the software engineer that supposedly made this Google memo that now you can read in full. It's on Google Docs and circulating widely on the internet as we speak. Just look it up and you can find the less edited version, which is not exactly the same as the one that Gawker 2.0, aka Gizmodo, put out, which stripped it of its links and made it look like a totally unscientific article. It's actually based on media reports, directly in some cases from groups that would not necessarily seem to be particularly right-leaning. Now here's the real skinny on the whole issue. People are being distracted over the content of the memo, and they're not understanding that the firing of this individual justifies everything he's pointing out. The essential point he's making has nothing to do with gender and has nothing to do per se with being against diversity. He's saying, well, we should look for diversity of ideology because that's really the problem as a company that Google has. The sort of race and gender diversity thing doesn't really necessarily matter so much, which is actually true. If a person, a corporate CEO, think of it this way, is sprinkling their company with workers who are like black or female or gay or something, what does that say about them as a person? Does it say, oh, they actually care about this issue? Or does it say, hey, this company is concerned with making money and wants to project a certain image of itself because it happens to lend itself well to making money and being left alone by people who still don't even understand that even with the diversity hires at Google or any of these other tech firms, white males are still overrepresented within the sampling. They don't even talk about that. They don't even care, specifically because Google makes it very visible that they supposedly care about the issue. No, Google cares about making a profit. That's their point. It's a business. It's a capitalistic, for-profit corporation. They care about money. That's all they need to care about. They don't need to care about diversity. It shouldn't be a problem. Who cares? They're there to make a buck. Hopefully they're hiring the best qualified individual for a position. If they're hiring a sprinkling of people who ultimately are less qualified just for show, that doesn't say positive things about the CEO or about the company itself. And this is not a Google problem, by the way. People are getting so distracted. Like, oh, Google... some people, they're like, Google has a toxic echo chamber, or Google made the right decision in firing this evil cis bigot or something. That's not the point. This is a wider problem. It's all of Silicon Valley. It's all of the U.S. business structure. Increasingly, businesses feel pressure to hire people who may not be as qualified. Simply, they're hiring based on skin color and gender, and there are people on the so-called left that don't have a problem with that. They should do blind hiring. It shouldn't just be blind enrollment to replace affirmative action. There should be blind hiring in corporations. Now, here's my idea. Because, of course, his memo has been proven right by the fact that he was fired for simply circulating a memo. My idea is this. People on the left, they talk a big talk about tolerance and diversity and all of these things. And yet they are right now celebrating the idea that someone with wrong-think opinions was fired from this company, despite apparently has a PhD from Harvard. So he's not exactly an intellectual lightweight. He has to have some degree of intelligence to have gotten a PhD in, what was it, systems biology, I think? Yeah, like the average person celebrating his firing could fulfill that same academic role, or certainly become a software engineer at Google. It takes some degree of skill to be able to get into that position. Unless the CEO decides that your position is expendable and doesn't care and just hires you as a diversity hire just to say, oh yeah, we've got so much diversity at this company, so you should invest in it. See, we're diverse, so you should leave us alone. Don't question any of our actual profit schemes or whether our projects are good or bad or whether our ideas are going to be good or bad for the long-term health and success of the company. Just ignore all of that because we hired somebody who was a minority. That's essentially what it boils down to. And it's a problem within these cultures. What we should do is extend the First and Fourth Amendment to specifically cover the internet. And the reason I say that is this. It takes all of these problems off the table. We're having a huge national debate over the role of censorship, which shouldn't exist at all online without the concept of criminal behavior. You know, if you're encouraging criminal behavior, doing something criminal, like you're slandering somebody or criminally harassing them, yeah, that's a problem. And that's always been enforced. It's also enforced, though, in the publishing industry. Like, you can't write a book that's just 100 pages of libel against somebody and expect to escape repercussions. It leaves you civilly liable, criminally liable, certainly can get your work taken down. And that's not censorship, that's saying other people will be respected. You don't have the right to unduly negatively impact others. Like, you can't stalk somebody, make a bunch of sock accounts pretending to be them and spew off about them or something like that. Unless it's satire directed at a celebrity or politician or something. There's a different threshold there. You can't encourage, like, violence. You can't dox somebody and say, oh, go to their house and burn it down or something like that. But those are other criminal behaviors. It's not just your opinion is offensive or unpopular. We need to take that sort of censorship, which is what it is. When Google talks about, like their YouTube, they're like, oh, we're going to sort of blacklist offensive content. No, what you mean is you intend to engage in censorship. That's what, to be honest, use the proper label for what you're actually doing. Because you're making an arbitrary determination outside of any actual legal recourse to say what is or is not offensive. You're making that arbitrary, artificial determination yourself based on, I guess, the whims of NGOs, and that's what you're attempting to institute. The memo's content doesn't even matter, other than he's saying, yeah, people with certain types of views are discriminated against in this company. There's an echo chamber here, and it's not just Google. It goes way, all of Google's competitors have the same problem. People lambasting Google alone and saying, oh, Google is so evil, censorship. They're all doing it. Facebook does it. Twitter does it. There are a handful of companies, upstarts, usually smaller end tech firms, that are rising up now that are specifically pledged to resistance against censorship. You'd think of something like Gab or BitChute. Other than that, though, all of these other companies are engaging in the same basic style of behavior, discriminatory hiring. They create an echo chamber, and by the way, some of those echo chambers are right-leaning. These same people, they would look at like Breitbart or Fox and say it's a corporation, we don't like that. Maybe discriminatory hiring practices, we don't like that. And they have an echo chamber. Yeah, like if you're really, really far to the left, you're going to make it really far at The Blaze. You're going to make it really far at Fox News. And they identify that as a problem. They say, well, this is just a right-wing echo chamber. Correct! And there are left-wing echo chambers too, but there are, left and right-wing don't matter. It's just an authoritarian echo chamber that happens to have views, a few views that are kind of sort of left or right-leaning. Ultimately, it's just a form of authoritarianism. It's just pro-censorship rhetoric. This is what people who oppose this have been saying for years. It's not a matter of whether you're being abused by the left or the right boot. You're still being abused. That's what people need to recognize. We need a constitutional convention to extend the Constitution to cover communications technologies like the internet. And by doing that, it takes the whole problem and completely gets rid of it. These tech firms, because they form such a substantial proportion of our economy, and such a substantial apparatus by which the average person conducts their First and Fourth Amendment related affairs, there should be protections in place under the Constitution for those. So that people aren't getting booted off some forum for wrongthink or something like that. By the way, it's going to protect people on the left. What people are saying right now, these people that are celebrating the firing of this individual, as though it was just a red letter day. You are telling me that you would have no problem with a corporation saying, oh, this person's engaged in like BLM activism, we're going to fire them. You know, not because of the views themselves, but their actions. Whether they're in or out of the workplace doesn't matter. We're going to fire them. We're going to fire this person who's a trans activist because we don't want activism associated with the company. We're going to fire this person for being an atheist. We're going to fire that person for being an Islamic activist. They go to the wrong mosque. It's got like an activist message. You can't fire someone for being black or for being gay or something, but you can fire them for any behavior that belies the fact that they're part of that group and trying to do any form of activism or talking out against abuse or something. What James Damore is saying is he feels abused. He feels like there is a deterioration of the possibilities of getting ahead, a deterioration into an echo chamber at Google aimed against people with loosely what would be generally defined as right-wing ideologies. and he gets fired for that, for simply pointing out abuse. What if somebody were pointing out that their company was like not gay friendly? They make a Facebook post, the CEO sees it and decides to can them. Would you be comfortable with that? Or would you hail that person as a martyr of free speech and then go after the business, threaten to boycott it, and say, well, it's not acceptable for this for-profit corporation to be trying to police what people say or think off of work time, in the privacy of their homes or somewhere else, not using work equipment, not on the clock. Why does the business have anything to do with it? By the way, there's another objection people have raised. Oh, well, companies have a certain brand, a certain image, and they have to be able to project that, and so they should be able to get rid of people that are engaged in like what they see as inappropriate thoughts, or you know, they're putting stuff online and the company doesn't agree with it, so they fire them. If every company were compelled under a constitutional amendment not to do that, it would no longer be a problem. Image would be built in other ways. They can easily adapt. And by the way, to people who say, well, the Constitution, it would be unprecedented. It doesn't affect anything other than government. You're already wrong. You're completely and totally wrong. A lot of the elements of the Constitution have been construed already in legal terms to protect people from abuse by corporations before. Why not simply institute a constitutional amendment making it more explicit? Why not? People will have the right to speak free. If they're not engaged in any harm or criminal behavior, they'll have the right to speak freely online. Businesses that wish to engage in distribution and so forth don't have the right to unduly impact that. And they don't have the right to partner with some government firm and violate people's privacy. That's the other component. Here's the other part, the one everyone is complicit in ignoring. What about tech firms working with governments to censor material? I would think that would be a grave constitutional issue, especially when it's not the U.S. government, especially when it's a foreign government. Why should a U.S. firm be compelled to bow before some foreign legalese? If Merkel wants Germans using YouTube not to be able to access certain content, they're capable of implementing that without affecting the larger user base. If Putin comes along and says, well, Russians shall not make Putin memes, does that mean that a tech firm should have to pony up the identity of any Russian poster making a Putin meme? Like you want to help oppression in other countries, like Saudi Arabia. Or Turkey's a better example. Erdogan and his judges and stuff routinely go after Twitter to try to have certain images or stories suppressed. Why should that be a thing? Doesn't make any sense. It's a foreign entity. It has nothing to do with some U.S. tech firm. It has nothing to do with You're essentially deciding that a foreign state has every right to come in and tell a company that it should suppress the movement of information even among U.S. users who are protected explicitly by the Constitution. It's just a form of communication. Make it clear if a firm is engaged in social media or hosting videos and stuff that it has to abide by the rudiments of the First and Fourth Amendment. Because it just makes sense. And yes, that is, the Constitution can contain everything. It's like prohibition. Prohibition could never have been passed by a simple bill. It was understood at the time it would require a constitutional amendment. It expanded the government's power to ban alcohol. Otherwise, it would have been illegal for them to try to do that. Regulate, yeah, maybe to some degree, but they couldn't ban it. It would have been unconstitutional until the Constitution was expanded to give them the right to do that. Now, it fell apart. It was a bad idea. It was morally wrong, and obviously didn't do well, because it was in competition almost with the Fourth Amendment, which gives people the right to privacy. It says basically leave you alone if you're drinking or something like that. But it could be expanded in that way. Yes, you could apply the Constitution to corporate power. At this point, such a large amount of the economy and such a large amount of communication occurs online that it could destroy our culture, strangulate aspects of the economy to do otherwise. That's what we should be doing. And then, by the way, these tech firms are absolved of having to police that content. It will save them money. It's not going to be bad for them. It's going to be good for them. And they'll all be on a level playing field. They'll all be subjected to the same basic constitutional arrangement. But this particular memo has been proven true by the actions of Google 24 hours later. It circulates. It goes internally viral. James Damore gets canned. Well, he was right. He's being kicked out of the business because he has certain views. It's as simple as that. I would think that would be something somebody supposedly liberal would be against. You know, it's almost like a little bit like a book burning. It's like you're standing around burning Beatles records because John Lennon said something unkind about Jesus. Oh, this person is immoral, has wrong think views. Their thoughts and their words are wrong. Oh, it's so terrible. Apparently, some people skipped work the next day because they were so triggered. I would think it would be a bigger problem for Google to have a bunch of unreliable employees who are going to skip work every time they get upset. I would think that would be a more compelling problem than James Damore circulated something unkind about our diversity hiring practices. Who cares? Maybe you should address the issue. See, now, by attempting to refute it and kick him out, they've made it front page news for a second day. Now more people are going to know that it's a problem at Google. Google made the wrong decision. They should have called him in, and they should have held a meeting, and they should have addressed the problems. There should have been others there who have those same views, and they shouldn't be canning people for having far-right views. This isn't a far-right view. It's a view against affirmative action hiring. That has nothing to do with right or left. Look, the very label doesn't make sense. You can't have an intellectually honest debate once you begin labeling things right and left. That's why I try not to use those terms. But if someone's going to call themselves a liberal, someone who supposedly has an ideology that's open-minded, willing towards discussion, understands words are not violence, yeah, if you're going to call yourself that, you should be standing against this kind of behavior. This is a for-profit corporation firing someone for their ideology, ultimately. At its core, that's what this is about. That's about all. Peace out.